Welcome to the Legally Armed America Gun Garage.
What I'm going to do today is talk a little bit about and show a little bit about what has worked for me in hand loading. Now, I'm definitely not an expert. Anybody that's tuning in to see an expert, you got to go somewhere else. This is not the place to go. I'm a new person at doing this. I'm a beginner, whatever you want to call it, a non-expert. However you want to classify me, I am not the person that you're going to be looking for troubleshooting issues or things like that. This is not a how-to video. This is a how we did it video. So anybody that's new, that's looking for some things, maybe some justification on why you might want to reload, we're going to try to provide a little bit of that information now. And also we're going to show some pretty, I guess, interesting things that we've run across while doing this segment that was kind of news to us as well. Some things that we actually weren't expecting to run across. If you're reloading for whatever reason, whether it's shortage of ammo, competitive shooting, for whatever reason, there's one major benefit in terms of hand loading, and that is consistency. You get more consistency on your powder. You control what powder. All powders react differently. You may put so many grains of one powder in one bullet to get a certain velocity and do something totally different with another powder. You got slow burning powder, you got medium burning powder, you got fast burning powder. So powder has a lot to do with everything. Where in a factory load, you get what you get. You also have a little bit more consistency on how you seat that bullet. Some of the rounds that come from a factory may load a little bit differently in a particular gun. So you may get some inconsistencies in loading based on factory loads. I, for one, shoot an STI 40 caliber in competition, and it likes a little bit longer bullet. So I seat it a little bit higher, and that's how I make that bullet. We're going to show you something that we ran across that was kind of eye-opening to us as far as seating and crimping in a factory bullet that really lends itself to a lot of inconsistencies in that factory load. And with hand loading, you have more control over that. Again, I am not an expert at hand loading. I'm not an expert at anything, but I'm an enthusiast. I like to do it, and I like to share what I learn, what I screw up on, or anything like that. And that's why we're putting this video together, because it's kind of interesting, some of the things that we ran across. So take a look. This is a 10-yard target that we're going to shoot at. Then we're going to hit a 20-yard target. Let's give this one a shot. Now keep in mind, we're not trying to compare these two bullets as if they are identical bullets. The Winchester is a 165 grain bullet, and the hand load is a 180 grain bullet. We're simply looking for signs of consistency or inconsistency in these two rounds and how they compare. Using a simple sandbag rest setup, we shot 5 rounds at both 10 yards and at 25 yards. We didn't see any real inconsistencies from either one of them with the factory load versus the reload, but keep in mind that we're not dealing with an expert shooter here either. So then we got the chronograph out to test feet per second. The factory loads were first. Then we moved on to the hand loads. Because we had a couple of chrono times in both groups that were a little bit out of whack, we decided to take the most out of whack chrono time out of each group and then see what our variances were there, and it really told a different story. The factory load had a variance of plus or minus 11 feet per second, while our hand load only had a variance plus or minus of 3 feet per second, really showing that the hand load was actually a bit more consistent, which is what we thought it would be. Now, we told you we ran across something that was a little bit unusual, and we have to attribute this to probably mass production and fast production of ammo in light of the current shortage that we have. Check this out. We've got, these are all from the exact same box of 40 caliber ammo. Look at the different sizes in these rounds right here. There were 4 of them that we picked just out of the handful on top that were all seated way too low. Now, you may be thinking this doesn't make a whole lot of difference, but think of this in terms of what we talked about earlier. as far as crimp goes, and the way that bullet is seated in there, there's a certain amount of combustion that takes place behind the bullet in the casing when the gunpowder is ignited via the primer. That bullet is not only not seated in the right place as far as being far enough out of the casing, but it's also not crimped properly. You're not going to have the proper seal on there that allows that combustion to take place and do what it's supposed to do behind that bullet to propel that bullet through your chamber and out the barrel at the proper feet per second or velocity. Well, as you can see, the factory loads were not terribly inconsistent, but there was a wider range of variation between the factory load and my particular load as far as feet per second velocity. So again, as I was saying, you can get a little bit more control over your overall performance of that bullet and that round in general when you hand load, because you're seating it yourself, you're getting a consistent seat, and you're also maintaining the right amount of powder in every single load. Finally, we came to the conclusion that in comparing a factory load and a hand load, that the factory feet per second had a variance basically of plus or minus 11 feet per second, where the hand loads was plus or minus 3 feet per second. Both rounds had random feet per second inconsistencies throughout the entire shoot. Both rounds had acceptable accuracy, no real inconsistencies to speak of. The factory ammo had some seating issues, as we showed earlier in the video. In closing, the hand loads appear to be slightly more consistent in terms of gunpowder, as well as better quality control as it pertains to bullet seating. Both rounds appeared to be equally accurate.
I like to picture Jesus as a ninja fighting off evil samurai.